Entre tanta tristeza,
yo soy alegría.
Entre tanta pobreza,
Yo soy bendición.
entre tanta religión,
Yo soy Cristo.
Entre tanto rencor,
Yo soy perdón.
entre tanta muerte, yo soy vida.
Nueva iglesia soy.
nueva iglesia,
Nueva iglesia soy. Nueva iglesia soy.
nueva iglesia soy.
nueva iglesia soy.
Cuando te invoqué, tú me respondiste, no me desamparaste, mi Señor. Nada temeré en medio de mi angustia, por cuanto tú eres mi habitación. Jesús, mi Dios, castillo mío, mi fortaleza y salvación. Jesús, mi Dios, en ti yo confiaré y debajo de tus alas estaré seguro y me librarás. Estaré seguro y me librarás. Cuando te invoqué, tú me respondiste, no me desamparaste, mi Señor. Nada temeré en medio de mi angustia, por cuanto tú eres mi habitación. Jesús, mi Dios, castillo mío, mi fortaleza y salvación. Jesús, mi Dios, en ti yo confiaré y debajo de tus alas estaré seguro y me librarás. Estaré seguro y me librarás. salvación. Jesús, mi Dios, en ti yo confiaré y debajo de tus alas estaré seguro y me librarás. Estaré seguro y me librarás. Estaré seguro y me librarás.
Just for a few moments, I'm going to be here in the set where you normally find me on the day of the weekly assembly. Today we are going to change to another place, and so I'm here to introduce the set of interviews. And for this moment, for tonight, there are two representatives of the Old Testament here, live. It's like if you could meet with those that have been transposed, with Enoch, seventh from Aden, and with Elijah, who was taken in a tornado. People say it was a car on fire, but because they don't read the Bible, there's no car on fire that takes people. The only car on fire was one that got on fire, that was the brother Luis's car. That's the only one. And well, without extending anymore, I'm going to leave the set of the weekends, and I want to invite you to come with me and these legitimate representatives of that time where we started to sow, when we started to dream, when we started to believe, when we started to make mistakes. But we were walking, and since now it's clear to us, we trip, we fall, we make mistakes. Those who do things, those who don't do anything and are just sitting on the side of the road, occupied on criticizing. And they give it a name to their criticizing and they say it's constructive criticizing. But I don't know what it constructs. It constructs roots of bitterness, it constructs division, it constructs bad suspicions. But bless God for the criticism of anyone, constructive or destructive, bad or good, any proposal, opposition, or idea. That means that we're generating what we want. We want the waters to move. And when the waters move, there's going to be someone who is numb, paralyzed, and is going to get into the waters, and he's going to activate. If he hasn't had an encounter with Jesus, at least he'll have an encounter with the movement of the waters. By truth or by contention, Christ is proclaimed. Very well, then, without further ado, come with me. Hello, here we are in our set of interviews, fulfilling what has been promised, because every promise is a debt, and every debt should be paid. And so, here we are, together with the characters that I had talked to you about. I'm going to introduce them to you so that together we can help turn on some of the lights to draw the veil over the past that for many people is an anecdote. For others, it's a mystery. For others, it really doesn't matter. But I want to tell you that, I want to tell you that what happened in those 12 journeys that we lived in that far 1978 and 1990. Well, many things happened that today will help us see, do, think, or avoid. We made mistakes that we don't make anymore. We learned lessons that now we apply. Well, many things. Once, recently, in a devotional or in a meeting at night, I introduced the example of a family in scarcity in the first stage of their lives, and they had one or more children in that condition. And then they move on to a better condition where there's no scarcity, but there's no wealth either. They have what they need to live what is necessary. They lack nothing, they have nothing to spare, and in that situation they have other children. And then that same family, who first was scarce and then had what they needed, are able to have wealth, and other children are born in that condition. And those who are born in that last condition don't lack of anything as the first ones did. But it is very important for them to know the story of the family. And that's why the scripture many times calls us to narrate and tell from parents to children the story so that we will know that there was a God with a powerful arm and an extended hand who did these and those and more wonders and prodigies to bring us out of conditions, to introduce us into many blessings. And so that is our Old Testament, for which I have two partners who have come with me for more than 40 years. Each one, not together now. And so without further ado, let me introduce them to you. So let me introduce them. With this camera here, you can see, and on the left hand we have Gabriel Berrio Acosta, and here we have Eric Robert Garnier. So if you don't know them, here they are. And so you are welcome. Thank you very much, brother. Thank you, excellent. Very happy to be here, brother, in this program special. Well, we are going to talk about, as Flavio Josefo said, about the antiquities. So, where should we start, Gabriel? Well, I would like to start, let's say, from my beginning. Many times I start thinking of how it was that I arrived to the church, and I laugh. It's funny because I used to live next to Brother Luis Laguna. Yes, and so you had a very sinful youth, and God disciplined you from the very beginning. Evil catches up with you. And so, well, that, for those who don't know me, is a joke. Brother Luis is a brother, and it's a friend for all of us, but we treat each other that way, with affection. Yes, and so the 24th of September had passed, and like 2 weeks after that, after September 24th, and since I lived, as I said, next to him, he invited me to his house, and he talked to me between quotation marks about God. And I say between quotation marks because the way that he presented God. And that's the reason why I remember it a lot. I don't remember how it was that we got to the topic, but he said to me, imagine that if I leave the door open, my home door, at night, nothing happens to me. The burglars don't come in. And I said, they don't come in? Leave it open and you'll see. And he said, no, they won't come in. And I said, but how? How wouldn't they come in? No, because God doesn't want. I said, oh, so if God doesn't want, then they don't come in? That's logical, right? If God doesn't want. And I just said, those things that you were telling me, they're strange. And he said, the thing is that I met God, and he doesn't let the burglars come into my home. And I said, okay, well, so what do I have to do? And he said, well, no, just read the Bible. And I said, but well, I don't have a Bible. And he said, well, let's buy one. So do you have a Bible now? Yes, of course. I finally got one. That was like a Saturday, and then on Monday, we went to the store of the Union of Bibles, and we bought it. And I said, well, what should I do now? And he said, start reading. And I said, but through where? He said, start with the New Testament, maybe Matthew. Interesting. Then Mark, and I thought this is the same thing as Matthew. They shouldn't have repeated it. And then Luke is longer, but it's the same. And then I got to John, and it just killed me. John just killed me. I fell in love. I fell in love. But going back to the main topic, it was the funny way that he presented the gospel. So it's just funny. It's funny the way he did it. I just think about it and I have to laugh. But anyway, I'm here. I'm here and it worked. So the problem is not how, but what. It was the way he hooked me in. So there's important to clarify this. 2 weeks had passed after our assembly on September 24th, and the level of knowledge of Luis was almost none. But he's encouraged. He has the will. For example, what you show us, that he said that if God doesn't want to, the burglars wouldn't go in. That's not true. God doesn't want them to go in. But the burglars are not guided by God. They are guided by ambition. They're going to go in automatically, even if God doesn't want to. People who want to blame the heavens or God or divinity of the bad things that happen in this world. Like that song that says to God that he gave a lot to some and nothing to the others. And so those are social issues. God doesn't want bad things for who is doing bad or the suffering of who suffers. But that's the result of the things when they are managed by men. And so if you leave the door open, the burglars are going to get in. That's if there was theology without a Bible, then our beloved brother. But of course, maybe he understood that the angel of the Lord encamps all around those who fear him. Let me remind you of when Luis's father gave him a watch, a very expensive one, and he's driving with his hand outside, and I'm the co-pilot. Was his car new too? No, no, his watch was new, and so yes, it was only the watch that was new. So he was going like that, and I told him, put your hand in because they might steal your watch. And he was saying there will be no adversity to the just. And he was going to say just when suddenly they took the watch and they stole it. And he asked, but how? How did this happen? And I said, but well, you're in Bogota. This is not the kingdom of heaven. You can have an experience with God, but he who's running with the watch doesn't. He sees the watch and he takes it. And so that's how it is. There's many people that believe mistakenly, thinking that God is going to intervene over the sovereignty of the humankind. And no, no, no. But well, so then, let's talk about Eric. Where do you come into this picture?
Yo,
I
fui
was
formado a
educated
nivel
in my school studies
colegio
with what we could
con
call
sacerdotes
priests
corazonistas.
of the heart.
Colegio Antonio Nariño,
In
estuve
the Antonio Nariño
7 años
School,
allí.
I studied 7 years
Éramos
there,
con misas
and
semanales
we
y
had a weekly mass,
siempre
etc.
estamos
And well,
inmersos como en
we
esa
are
cultura
always
de
immersed in
que
that
hay un Dios.
culture that says there is a
Eh,
God. But I
pero
felt that there
yo
was
presentía
something
que había
more
algo más
to
que eso que
that I
estábamos
was
percibiendo
perceiving
y
and
que
to what I was
recibía allí,
receiving there.
pero no
But
sabía
I
qué era.
didn't know what it was. You thought there were more gods?
No, decía, no,
I said,
no
like,
me hallaba
no, I
allí
just
en ese
couldn't
tema.
find
No
myself there.
encontraba
I couldn't
una
find
paz
like
o
a
algo que me
peace
dijera,
or
este es
something that
Dios.
would tell me this is God.
Pero
But
sabía
I
que
knew
existía,
that
digamos.
it
De alguna
existed.
manera fui enseñado desde
In
niño como
different
orar
ways,
en
well,
las
I was
noches, en las
taught
fiestas
to pray at
patrias.
night
Mis
since I
papás me
was a
enseñaron
child.
himnos.
You know, the things that
Como que
parents
sabía
teach
que
children.
había, pero era
Like
algo
if I
pues
knew that it
por
existed,
allá,
but it was something
lejano.
that was very far.
Pero un día
But
escuché
one
la
day
palabra
I
que
heard
trajo Alfredo en la casa
a
de
word
gente
that
israelita
was brought by Alfredo at my
empecé
home,
como
and I
a
started
quedar
to
impactado,
be
sorprendido
impacted and
por
surprised to
ver
see
una palabra
there
que
was a
nunca había
word that I
escuchado,
had
pero
never
más que
heard.
eso era como que se estuviera
But more than
transmitiendo,
that, it was like if
era la vida.
life was being
Y eso
transmitted,
me fue
and that was
sellando,
a
me fue
seal. It was
marcando por
something that
siempre.
marked me forever.
Y me
And
encontré
and I
que
found that that
ese
was
era
the
el
real
verdadero
God.
Dios, ese era el verdadero Señor, y estaba
That was the real
conociéndolo.
God. I was starting
Aún
to
sin
know
entender
him,
quizá lo que
and
compartía
probably
Alfredo y
without
esto, pero todo
understanding
era fantástico, cada
the things
porción
that
que
Alfredo
compartía,
was
cada
saying.
enseñanza,
But it was
era
fantastic. Everything that he
excelente.
shared with us, all the
Y luego cuando
teachings,
empezamos a
they were
cantar
excellent. And
las
then when we
alabanzas
started
ahí
singing
en estas
in
reuniones,
these assemblies,
eso me
and
fue
this
atrayendo
started
más la
to
música, que
attract
antes
me towards music
no
because I
tenía
didn't have
esa
that
conexión.
before. And I
Fui
started to
aprendiendo a
learn the
usar solos, fui
songs, and
aprendiendo
I
guitarra
started to
y ya
learn
la
how to
alabanza
play the
también fue
guitar.
algo que
And the
me llevó a esa
musical
comunión
worship,
más cercana
it
con el
also
Señor.
made me get closer to
Entonces
God.
para mí
And
esta
so for
primera
me, that
experiencia
first
es el
experience
impacto
was the
del
impact,
encuentro
the
con el
encounter
Dios
with
vivo y
that
fue
God that
presentado
is
por el hermano
alive,
Alfredo a mi vida
who was
allí en la sala de
introduced
esa casa.
to my life
Y
by
eso
Brother
fue un sello
Alfredo
para
there
siempre.
in that house. That was a seal forever. And from that time that Gabriel and Eric are talking about, 44 years have passed. That's the time that you've been walking. And compared to eternity, it's not a lot, literally. But well, okay, so now we're kind of doing good just to start. Now we can start. Okay, so what other point or line would you like to enhance that it would be useful more than anecdotic so that we can find things that will be useful for everyone? Like when we do the interviews of questions and answers, the questions that are made should find an echo in the questions that everybody has. And then these answers would be for many people. And so we don't want to talk about anecdotes that are very personal, even though they are, but it's important that they transcend in its teaching and will illustrate things and that can be practical to apply today in the 21st century.
Muchas veces veo, por ejemplo, que el hermano Alfredo
I see many
todo el
times,
tiempo mira el reloj
for example,
y dice,
that
uy, ya me
Brother
pasé del
Alfredo
tiempo,
many times
entonces
looks
eso
at the
para mí
watch and says,
me
"Oh,
recuerda
I
que
passed over the
en
time
esa época
and I don't
para
want
mí fue
to
muy
tire
apasionante,
you."
pero
And then I
muy
remember that
apasionante.
time. For me, that time
No,
was very
no,
passionate,
nunca,
but very, very
nunca. Yo
passionate.
me acuerdo que
We never used a chronometer, never. I remember that I came back from work, arrive home, change, and then leave. And I would walk all the way over there to Tierra Linda, and we used to meet at 7. And we knew what time the meeting would begin, but we never knew what time it would end. We never knew what time it would end, and it was like that for a long time. They could end at 2, 3 in the morning, and many times we would continue until the next day, until dusk. Yes, I would arrive home, take a shower, and go to work. It was, well, it still is. It still is very passionate. I don't know if it's that now we're getting cold or if we're becoming more mature, but I don't think it's maturity. Maybe it's more like cold. Yes, it's cold. So no, nothing in the past is ever better. We are always doing things better. For example, I've told you about the time when we were in the mountains by a bonfire, and I would start talking when the night started, and I would finish at dawn. So I talked 4, 6, 10 hours bringing teaching. So it's not that I don't have anything else to say when I talk for 30 or 40 minutes, but more that we can present it better. In the past, to be able to prepare coffee, you had to first roast the coffee. Actually, it's first to dry it, then to roast it, then to grind it, and then bring the water and boil it. And you would have to cook with wood, so you would have to cut the wood, and well, and you would use a clay pot, and then you would need a mesh strainer, and then you would put in the coffee, and then you would have to put some cold water on the surface for the coffee to go to the bottom. And after all of that, you would take a sip of coffee, and you would have to spit 10 of the seeds. And let's say that would take hours to prepare a coffee. Now you can prepare it in a minute. You have automatic coffee makers with sachets, and well, the product is basically just coffee. The same coffee. Just to give an example, you might say, oh, there wasn't anything like that coffee that was prepared with wood. And because of preparing or cooking in wood, that's why your great grandmother died and your grandmother died because of lung cancer. Instead, today with the microwave, well, it's the same, but not lung cancer. It's a different type of cancer. And so we were deforesting the planet, and literally, without exaggeration, the people who cooked with wood, they died from problems and illnesses like COPD, emphysemas, tumors. So yes, we had very long disquisitions where we studied, and they were very long. So now what we do is to divide them. We take it by parts, like a dissection of the story, of the topic. In a devotional, we can work on one part, and then the next day another part, and the next day another part, and we can develop it during the week or during the month. We've worked that August is the month of the wind, and September the month of love, and like that. June the month of the father, May the month of the mother, and so we work the whole month. We used to do that before in the neighborhood Restrepo or Cundinamarca in Bogota. It was all night, but now we do it the whole month. And also, it was kind of like a competition to see who was going to be the last to fall asleep. And so they would start falling asleep and falling asleep and falling asleep. And since my ministry wasn't to be the voice that would claim in the desert, talking to myself, but I prefer to do it this way or to have a dialogue with people who are attentive, people who are kind, cordial, and to have all of their attention. But no, it was like people making an effort, and we had to interrupt, to hand out coffee or maybe a broth, and then again. It was like a fight for survival. So it's not that we had more love than now. We do it better now. It's like a construction. We are placing rock over rock or brick over brick. So we're doing things by parts, but it is being very well founded. And then there's enough time to assimilate it and then practice it. I mean, it's different to receive a glass of water and another that they will give you the water with a firefighter's hose. You might won't even get to drink a drop. It can throw you down. It's the same water, but with the right dosage, it can be assimilated easier. At least at first with the hose, we were cleaned. Thank you, God, for the hose of this mat. I think that talking about that intensity of time, one of the things that also marked my life was the experience of living in community. Because, like that, it wasn't 6 or 8 hours, but it was all the time 24 hours. And we were leaving aside your space, your things, your house. But it was the communion, life in community, the experience of the brotherhood that was very near. And all of the discipline and formation and order. That was like another seal. It just marked me forever. Forever. It was an unforgettable experience. And I think it was for all of the people who lived that experience. We actually had the opportunity to live with Gabriel in the same community, in the same rural community. And so when the Lord summons to any action, well, we just have to go, even though you don't know where you're going or what's going to happen. Because I didn't know where I was going or what we were going to do. But then, after all of that experience happened, you thank God for it. Because it renewed my life, it transformed my life forever. And so, it's to be able to say yes and to be present and to remain. So that seal will take you to appreciate God's things, His life, and to become faithful, really. In this season, more modern, from 2010 on, we have a small teaspoon of life in community, which are the activities or exercises of Gilgal. Gilgal is an exercise that is for 4 weeks, each of the basic levels, which are three. So let's say that it's a month. So the three Gilgals are 3 months with everything included. I mean, a bell rings and they can go and have their food. They don't have to cook. Let's say that they were very pampered. It was very soft. People say, oh, Gilgal, that's very heavy. It's heavy. But life in community was projected for 3 years, which was the years 80, 81, 82. That was in the city and in the countryside. And some very beloved brothers, they got scared, and for a reason, they never lived in community. But part of the requirements for living together was to leave families, studies, and work. So it was just to leave your home so that we could go and live together. It was like being in the army, because I had the chance to be in the army too. When you go to the army, that's the end of, family, studies, partners, work, anything. because you are providing a service there enclosed, but it has a time limit. Well, this wasn't enclosed because you could visit your family at any moment. You could call them at any moment. That's the difference with the army. It was only when you had permission. So it wasn't a military confinement. But yes, it could be similar. So it was basically 3 years, not 3 months. And we would share everything. I guess the only personal possessions that we had was our underwear, our toothbrush, and the Bible. The rest, we would share everything. We would wash the clothes, and maybe Gabriel would wear this shirt, and then I would wear that t-shirt, and Eric that one. And it was like that. Everything was in common. No one would say that they owned anything that they had. It was an uprooting, a detachment. We basically lived in scarcity. Our wealth was symbolic. We went through a little poverty. We were a little hungry. We had a little bit of all of that, and without having to, because we all had our own houses. We had our parents. We could have comfort. We could have been more comfortable. And so most of us were professionals or university students. There were also students from school who had everything at home, or we did. And so we went out to have that experience voluntarily. It was a voluntary subjection to that discipline because we had all of our things and the comfort that was waiting for us over there. I remember a character, X, I'm not going to say the name. He said this is like a concentration camp. So he left, and that the three of us were there in Palestine. And yes, it was a little bit difficult. There wasn't water, there wasn't electricity either, but we didn't have a car, but there wasn't a road either. Well, there was a dirt road that would take you out after walking for like an hour to the main road. And so basically, there wasn't anything. The only thing there was scarcity. But that was the idea, that was the exercise. And we took it on voluntarily. So if we didn't want to learn, we would have stayed home. But we went there to form character, to form our temper, to work on our willpower, to discipline the body and bring it into subjection. And someone might say it might have a reputation of wisdom, but it doesn't have any value against the appetite of the flesh. Well, I think that the results from the exercise mark a difference. And of course, first, we are not, and we weren't, children tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine. But we've had a walk and a journey with a steady step, with a strong step. And of course, it's really good that you remember that experience of community. There are many names of pleasant remembrance, many anecdotes of so many things. Some of our partners didn't want to get uncomfortable. Sometimes when we were scarce, we had to share the food. But sometimes we found brothers that had their own food stash with their own cheese, their own ham, and other things. But that's the envy that all children have. The thing is that there was a lot of childhood, and we also had some partners that didn't quit their jobs. I told you about, and if you remember, about our activity as bakers, and that it started when Gabriel quit his job as an engineer in the multinational Singer. The name is Singer. Singer, yes. Singer, yes.
Singer,
Singer
Singer
sewing
Sewing Machine
machines.
Company, International Corp. Inc.
International Corp
Bueno,
Inc.
claro,
Anyway,
esto,
and that was an example for all of
esto
us. But
es
we did also
ejemplar, pero
have
también
some
tuvimos compañeros
partners
que
who, well,
nos
they wanted to have
accedían
access to
a
pray
orar
with
con
us,
nosotros, a convivir con nosotros, a
to
pernoctar
spend
con nosotros,
the
pero
time with
no
us,
dejaron
to spend the night with us,
su
but they
trabajo,
didn't
sea en
want to
alguna
leave their
institución o
jobs,
sea en
maybe
una,
in an
en fin,
institution
eran
or in any other
como
place.
semi,
It
semi
was like
internos.
a semi
Nosotros sí estábamos ahí
internship they had.
sumergidos,
And
bautizados.
the other ones, well, we were there
Es como,
submerged,
como que te van a bautizar
baptized.
y te
So
sumergen en
it's
las
like if
aguas
you
del
were
río,
going
pero
to
tú
be
dejas una pierna
baptized
afuera,
and
como
you are
la
submerged
pataleta.
in the waters
Se ve
of the
extraño.
river, but
Es
you
mejor
leave a leg
sepultado
outside,
completamente.
like a ballet dancer.
Entonces,
It looks
teníamos hermanos que
strange. It's
desayunaban
better to
con
be
nosotros,
completely
cenaban
buried.
con nosotros,
So there were brothers that
pero
were
estaban
with us for
todo el día por
breakfast.
allá
They had dinner
perdidos.
with us.
Bueno,
But the rest of the day
en
they
fin,
were
¿qué,
outside,
qué otra
somewhere
cosa
else.
destacamos?
But,
Qué nos va
well,
sirviendo de lo que estamos
what
hablando
else
que
can we
pueda
highlight?
a
What else
todos
can we
los
talk about
amigos, hermanos,
that
compañeros de
could
marcha de la
serve
iglesia
as a teaching
de esto que estamos
for
hablando?
all of our friends, our partners here? For those who are militating with us, well, that anytime that we have the possibility to participate when we are summoned for something, well, we should try to be there because it's for our own good, so that we can advance for our spiritual development, and that you can't leave it for later. You say, I'll do it later, another day. But for example, the brother would mention about the experience of Gilgal, and people sometimes would postpone being there. And then pandemia came, and Gilgal was over. So there wasn't later. And maybe some people would like to do it now, but they didn't have the experience. So when there is a summon, you should be there. It's like when the sea opens, you just need to cross because it's going to close again. It's that moment when you have to take advantage of the opportunities. And with whatever it is, even if it seems difficult, it's something that is going to form you. It's going to be producing a jewel in you or with you. It needs to be carved. There's a need of fire, but it's so that you can shine, so that you can be better, so that you can be more prepared. And so it's to be able to assimilate what God has for you. It isn't always the favor of God, the blessing, the answer, what I need, but it's truly what I need that is given to me by God, not what I'm waiting as a benefit only. Let's say what you would look for normally. But God, in His love, covers everything, and He knows what we need for us to be able to advance. So I think that that is important to take advantage of that, of those experiences. And well, after that, as the brother said, of course, we went back to our activities. I went back to studying, and actually, from then on, I became the best student. I had the best ICFES. Then my working activities began. I went to the university, etc. And so, well, like a normal life. But every time I get more involved with God to the point that I receive the calling to serve in the construction of God, to participate in the construction of the local churches, not only as a musician, but
Mientras
as
estás
the
trabajando en la
minister of
obra
the
del
word,
Señor,
sharing.
eres
And while you're
profesional,
working with God,
trabajas,
you are a
te
professional,
mueves en
you
esos campos.
work, you move in those spaces.
Es que
Of
le
course I
pregunto
do.
al hermano
Yes,
porque en
that's
estos
right.
días alguien me
The
decía,
reason why I'm asking
alguien se
is
quedó
in these days,
con una
someone
enseñanza que en
was
últimas no la
telling
recibió
me, someone
directamente,
kept
querer
a
que
teaching
renunciara a todo para
that
vivir en comunidad. Pues hicimos
finally
eso
they didn't
por
receive
3 años.
it directly. and that is to quit everything to live in community. And we did do that for 3 years. And the four things that we had, we put them together to put our lives together there. And then, well, we went on to develop our lives as Eric is narrating, which was also your case. But this brother was telling me, no, I didn't go back to work or to do anything, waiting to have the time, because the Bible says no one engaged in warfare entangles himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who enlisted him as a soldier. And so I was worried about this bad reading that was given because he wasn't able to develop. He said, no, I'm dedicated to the spiritual things. And then I would say, so you know Hebrew, you know Greek, you know Sanskrit, you play the saxophone, you can read partitures, you play the piano, you're a composer, you speak different languages, you're a translator, a Biblist. No, I'm just to see if God moves me in either direction. The thing is that God's work is internal, not external. God's work is inside us, and how can we talk about the gospel if we don't relate with people? Actually, many of these circles of prayer that we've had at home are with the people that we relate to professionally in the activity that, for example, what my wife develops, a political manager or a leader of the community, a social leader, or in my case with my company, Garnier Associated, the entrepreneurship that we have. No commercials, please. Well, we've met people to whom we can share God, the gospel, and we have gotten together in our house. But if I'm isolated, who am I going to talk to? So this way of thinking of being isolated, it doesn't proceed. So what's your opinion about this, Gabriel? I think that it's logical. This character that you just talked to us about, it's like if he was on pause, stand by, waiting. I don't know what for. I don't know what he's waiting for. One of the things that I've learned is that there is a moment in which you have to make a decision. Waiting, as they say in Medellin, bad can also be good. I had never heard that before. I mean, what they want to say is that it doesn't matter what comes. I mean, anything that happens, but you can receive it with a good face because you decided. Because if you decided, it's just to go forward. And so that is something that I've learned with a lot of difficulty. And that's something that happened to me, but it's been very good. Would you give this character that we are talking about the advice that you implicitly gave all of us when you were sitting here in this same set with your wife, Christina, and with your son, Samuel, when you presented that you were going back to the old path? Would you do that? Well, what I'm saying is that he's taking too long. What is he waiting for? And the thing is that this character is not just one person. He represents a whole community of people who are probably numb. Let's put it that way, like paralyzed. Yes, maybe like the scripture says, like the spirit, they don't know where they're going or where they're coming from. It's like, let's just wait to see what happens. What are you bringing me? And there's nothing. The things that we have lived, that we have talked about, are experiences of which we can't live as past glories, but it does give us the foundation. We have to recognize where everything started, the origin. because it's the impulse to move forward. Because everything will always be better, and we are going upward. That's the path that we have before us. It's growing. So that to be able to look back is just to recognize the hand of God in our lives so we can project to go forward. Maybe with more momentum, with more decision, with a bigger testimony, and without the mistakes that we might have made in the past. That's the sense of being able to look back. Not just to be longing for if I had, I wish this hadn't happened. No, that makes no sense. Of course, that's the sense of having started something, which is named New Church. So the old church has to die in the desert, literally. And I don't mean people, but more mental and emotional attitudes. I mean ways and modes of behavior that should literally stay behind. We have to put to death what is tyrannical so that a new life, a newborn life of an uncorrupt seed, so that we can taste it. It shouldn't be a concept. We should be living it, enjoying it, radiating it in the family, in the partners, the friends, and many brothers who we relate with. The rest, it would just be a philosophy, a strange one, just to be a loner. As Gabriel said, waiting for something that doesn't have a handle or floor. It won't have a conclusion because the Spirit is not going to bring anything. Because the Spirit doesn't have where to blow. So your Paisa philosophy is very pragmatical, no? What's bad is also good. That's Proverbs 32:1. Okay, well, it's a pleasure for me. It's a joy, a delight to be able to share with friends and partners of so much. Imagine, is 44 years of this journey. We've had anecdotes of cold weather, warm weather, and hot weather, of so many things. And while we are talking and sharing, all of those pearls just start to come out here and there. But this is a story that begins on September 24th in the year 78. I came from the year 76, ruminating this process, getting prepared. I've been teaching that you should do the same. When you have a word, you should ruminate it and process it for at least 2 years. Even if it's a word that you hear from my mouth in a devotional and you say, wow, and you write it down, don't preach it that night or the next day or on the weekend, but ruminate it, chew on it, regurgitate, and swallow it again, and eat it again. Compare it with the scriptures, and then construct over that. Walk over it, live it, and make sure it is that way. And when you realize that it is that way, live it until it becomes flesh. And then that word, you won't have to say, as Brother Alfredo said, no, because the word doesn't have a copyright. That word will be yours if you walk over it. Everything that the sole of your feet go over will be yours. But you need to walk over. If you don't, then it is just mine. You would be stealing it. But if you walk over it, it's yours. You'd be the owner. Of course, and what's the price that you have to pay? To walk over it. If you don't walk over it, you're stealing. And so the burglars, they don't enter the kingdom. So walk over it and it's yours. Wow, that's so marvelous. Yes, just walk over it, and that would be produced there in your heart. You would be doing all the still, the distillation, all of that marvelous work that will bring the new wine that you will be able to serve and minister in the wedding in Canaan or wherever you are. And well, this begins on the 78, and there's 12 journeys that finish in 1990. Why did we stop? Let's see. Let's finish with that. Why do you think that we
Durante
stopped?
mucho tiempo se nos estaba hablando,
For a long
el
time,
hermano hacía mucho
we
énfasis,
had been
hermano,
talked about,
y era
and Brother Alfredo made a
la
lot of
cuenta del banco.
emphasis
Yo
on
no sé si el
the
hermano se
bank
acuerda de eso.
account. I don't know if you
Que
remember
era
that.
qué
It talked
teníamos
about
en el
what we
banco
have
interno,
in the internal bank,
porque
because we can have an
podemos
account
tener una cuenta
but
en el banco, pero
without
sin
any
plata,
money,
sin fondos.
without funds. And he
Insistió
insisted
mucho tiempo
many,
en eso,
many times
de que teníamos que
about
tener
that. And he would say, lay
tesoro en
up
el
for
cielo.
yourself treasures in heaven. And
Como
of
que,
course,
¿y cómo
due
no?
to the
Fuimos, según
results,
eso, por los resultados
we
mismos,
were unaware of this
fuimos
teaching.
ajenos a esa enseñanza.
Maybe
De pronto le dimos
we
más
gave
importancia
it more importance
a lo que aparentemente
to
estábamos
what we
caminando
were
solamente por
apparently
estar ahí
walking
presentes,
over, just for being there,
pero
present,
caminando no estábamos.
but we weren't walking.
Es que la
Because
presencia
just
no se
being
camina,
present doesn't mean that
se
you're
hace camino al
walking.
andar.
You experience the road when you walk.
Mm.
You could add some music to that sentence.
Qué manera de cerrar.
And
O
yes,
sea, y por decirlo,
time
no alcanzó el tiempo.
caught
Ya
up
llegó el
to
momento en que el
us,
Señor dijo, no, no, no va más,
and the moment
no va
came
más.
when God said, that's
No
it,
sé, de pronto estábamos tan
no
confiados.
more. I don't know, maybe we were just very self centered. But we had talked about that we were going to work 12 journeys. That's what's between Mizraim and Canaan. 12 journeys. And if we were in the level, a decent level, then we would continue. But if we weren't, well, to be just another church of the 7,000 churches that exist in Babylonia now, well, it makes no sense. We were going to be the one that was going to be clean without a spot, without wrinkles. That God can feel proud, that He can say, this is my dove, this is my perfect. But not just one more, no. And so then Brother Eric wrote a song that said, the 12th year has arrived, you decide if you lose or govern. And we sang the whole year, and nobody paid attention. So that's what happens. You can hear it, but you won't walk over it. What you're saying, just to be present, doesn't make the road. That was very clear. And since there wasn't any walking, I kept my part, and it was over. About that, I want to say that yes, we were part of that generation that didn't believe and didn't walk. And that's why they came to an end. And in that moment, God had announced it. But today we're representing maybe that old generation, but not the 10 that didn't believe, but the two, Joseph and Caleb, who did believe, to tell those who lived in that time, or those who are in doubt, that it's time to believe, that it's time to go forward, that it is possible, that there is a promised land. And so if you listen to the voice of any of those 10 today, don't believe it. Don't pay attention to that. But let's go forward, because the word is always yes, amen, and is certain the presence of Jesus Christ alive today, and his work is a reality, and you are part of that work. I absolutely agree. Considering that the 10 who discourage are people who have been in the kingdom of heaven. They've been in Canaan. They've brought the fruit. They've tasted the fruit. It says, I've been there, I've eaten, I've seen, I've touched, but their heart full of disbelief and of an X thing. To sum up, if you put everything together, the result is that they're afraid, that they're cowards. Well, let's not listen to that. As Eric says, just hear the voice in your heart. The internal testimony that says to you that for someone who believes, everything is possible. So if you can believe, you are already in victory because everything is possible. Everything is possible. That's what is known as, or what literally translates, El Shaddai, the mighty powerful. El Shaddai is not exactly the name of the real God. It's the name of a tribal god from Canaan. They gave names to all of the gods and all of the peoples. It's like the fair in the towns, the different types of fairs. So it was like that. They had their different types of gods. And so the mighty powerful is that I can do anything. That means I'm mighty powerful. In Christ who strengthens me. That's what Philippians 4:3 says. And who believes is the mighty powerful. Right? And so then he doesn't have to, well, not to listen to that voice, to the mermaids singing. Those would be the 10 spies. Very well. You can close with your reflection. I liked very much that word of bringing. I think that it is from Antonio Machado. It is sang by Serrat, but is from the Spanish poet. So, how would you want to close? What would you want to say to all of this family, to all of this audience who is there already saying, when are they going to finish? So now, we're going to finish now. So I want to say this, and it's that as we did say many things at the beginning, but we made ourselves deaf to those words. Now there is also a lot of word that is coming, and it's necessary for each person to make a decision over it. Because if we don't, the encouragement is not enough. It's that the encouragement, it's like, let's say that you live happily, and so you are encouraged. But to be encouraged doesn't mean that you're walking. It doesn't mean that you're living it. It means that you're happy. And then when the happy is over, and then everything would be over. That's what happened to us 12 years after. It's the moment to take advantage of what we have. Is that we should take advantage of what we have. If you have a little, have it. If you have a lot, have it. Take advantage of it. And you could say, oh no, well the thing is that I would like something different. But no, just take advantage of it. That's excellent. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Eric, your reflection for closing? Well, there is a text that says, to all who received him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. And so one thing is that you get connected and listen and listen and listen, but something different is to receive that. Believe. Receiving is related to swallowing, so you make it part of yourself. I mean, to pay attention to the word, so you can make it your own activity. Those people have the possibility of becoming the children of God. It's not just to be there in a simple way of listening, just like a spectator. It is to be participant, to enter into that action as a product of what I have received in my heart. And that takes me to the action. And because we have to be very careful because we are receiving word in a very abundant way in the mornings, at night, every day, without missing a day from Brother Alfredo, at least from the beginning of the pandemic. And we can just get used to, oh, here it comes again, and I get used to it, and I make a religion out of it. I connect every day, every morning, every night, and that's just my custom, and I make it religion. But then, what is it that I'm doing with the word so that the same thing that happened in the 90s wouldn't happen today? So that we can make something important out of this to be able to place it into practice. And moreover, the brother is telling us how to do it in a very simple way and very clear. It's amazing. So I think that from the smallest to the biggest, we can advance and we can appreciate what we are having today, which is a word that no one has heard before, because it's the revelation of something that had been sealed, and it's been brought for this time, which is the right time for it, and for us who have received the calling in this time to participate of this great work, the work of God on earth. And so I think that this is important as an advice. Very good. 57 minutes and 4 seconds. That's what the chronometer says. And on my part is not to go against when the control master does this sign, this. And well, it was a pleasure, and thank you very much for being here, for accepting this invitation. And well, thank you to all of this great family that was listening to us with attention. These are things that are true, like an old song used to say. It would say trivial and simple are the things about love. And so these are things that we have lived in a very simple way, but it's our life and it's real. They are things that we have lived and they are full of testimonies. We have seen operations of God and wonders that, as it has been written, no one would believe if we told. But there's also a new generation that has seen many other things. But well, for the rest, again, thank you. A huge hug. And today, in a particular way, we are going to fast with a moment of silence so that you can pray. So the image is going to be in off, and you pray your personal prayer. The reflection that might have come up after hearing people who have walked, those who have scratches and injuries of the battle and are tired and have sweat, old and new, frustrated loves or dreams that have not come true, scars in their souls, and many things, like if they were dead. But here we are, alive. And so that's it. That's the way to construct a winner. Someone who has a victory is not an angel that is coming down with a dress that is white, spotless. Nothing touches him, nothing damages him. No, we are people like you who are listening. Like me, I have scars over the scars. And so that's life of a worker, of a fighter, of a warrior. I'm not ashamed of the gospel because it's the power of God. So let's pray, each of you, in your heart. And we're going to finish our assembly and listen to the last song and have a good weekend. Go ahead.
abriera, no caeré, no, no, no caeré. Yo permanezco aquí de pie, sigo confiando, sigo alabando, sigo cantando, aunque la noche cegara mis ojos, no pararé, aunque la tormenta moviera los mares, no me hundiré, aunque la tierra temblara y se abriera, no caeré, no, no caeré. Yo continúo creyéndote, oh Dios, sigo alabando, sigo adorando, sigo confiando en ti, Señor. Sigo confiando en ti, Señor. Sigo confiando en ti, Señor. Aunque no te viera ni te oyera, proseguiré. Aunque esta noche se alargue, aquí yo estaré, Señor. Aquí yo estaré, Señor. Aquí yo estaré.